Welcome to the Being Curious Show. I'm Brian Mariani, founder of No Shift Own.
And I'm Kelly Wagner, publisher of Edge Magazine. Our show is about curiously connecting teachers and seekers on a wide range of topics in a safe space. Few topics will be off limits, and we have some amazing guests to share with you.
Our intention is that our conversations will spark your own curiosity to create a life that lights you up and inspires you to be kind, thoughtful, open-minded to yourself and others.
We are on AM 950, Sundays at 2 p.m. and all podcast platforms. So, Brian, what are you curious about today?
Okay. Well, Kelly, here we are. We've got our show. We're ready to go. It's not every day, or it's not every time we do the show where we know going into a conversation it's going to be a very important one.
Right.
And it might not be. We tend to have a lot of fun on this show, and we like to keep it, well, especially you always bring me back into the fun zone. I try to take it. I'm always the one trying to be serious, and that never works. But today we're really very grateful to be having this conversation. And we actually have a guest host with us today who's not a guest to the show. Everyone knows you, Elizabeth. Thank you for being back with us. And we'd love for you to introduce our guest today.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Kelly, for having me. And I am, this is a subject near and dear to my heart, being a survivor myself and having done a lot of advocacy work to prevent abuse of any kind from existing for young people or young adults or children. And with us today in studio, we have Kathryn Robb. And Kathryn Robb is done a lot of advocacy work. She's the executive director of Child USA Advocacy. And she has been paramount in helping change laws across the U.S. so that children are able to be safe and to prevent harm. And she's going to be sharing some of her expertise with us today. And we also have Tim Ballard, who is also been paramount in speaking up against how to prevent abuse, how to prevent generational trauma, and using his own lived experience to shift the platform. Tim comes at it from a, background also in finance and real estate, and he's been instrumental in using his voice to make change as well. And I've had the honor and the privilege to get to work with them in different spaces, and I'm grateful for each of their work. So welcome, Kathryn, and welcome, Tim, and feel free to.
Yes, welcome. And thank you, Elizabeth, for getting the conversation started. For our listeners, maybe Kathryn, you could go first. Just give us an idea of who you are, like who Kathryn is, who showed up into this work. Obviously it didn't start on day one, but you have your own story. So give us an idea of who you are and why this work is so important to you. And then, of course, we want to get to know you and Tim, and let's have a conversation here. But just let us know who you are and why you're so passionate about this work.
Sure thing, and thanks for having me, guys. The best way for me to answer that is that I was a little girl, and I was a little girl who was sexually assaulted when I was 8 to about 14 or 15 by someone I knew very well, trusted, and at one time loved. And I always come back to the little girl of Kathryn, because she's sort of lit a fire in my soul about how I can make changes so other little girls and little boys don't go through what I went through. It took me a very long time. I'm sure Tim can speak to this as well, that it took me a long time to come forward and share my abuse publicly. I was in my early 40s. And I understand as an attorney and an expert now in what we need to do to change our laws to make kids safe. I see it working, and I believe that I believe that we owe it to all of our children to make the world safer. And as cheesy and crazy as that sounds, the little girl in me is holding the bullhorn on this. Um, and and we really need to get to the root of the problem, and that is holding bad actors and creepy predators accountable. And the way we do that in our world, is through our legal system, whether it be criminal or civil. So I'm really dedicated to it. It's my mission is very simple. How do we make kids safer? And how do we protect our children? And also educating the public on the enormous epidemic of this problem. So the little girl, Kathryn, just keeps on yelling.
Amazing. Thank you. And Kelly actually is someone who sees visuals, and she's very tuned in, tapped in, aligned, intuitive, whatever word you want to use. And she actually just shared in the private chat that she is seeing all of our inner children here with us today. They're holding hands. They are with us. They are acknowledging this conversation, and they're being strong for us. So Kelly, anything you want to share about that?
Well, awesome. Thanks for bringing that up. Kathryn, also what I see for you, and Elizabeth, please check my math. I see you in this beautiful paper crown that you made and this magic wand, and you're doing this like, I've got this. And it's this power, and you're like standing there, and you're like, it's powerful. You're using your voice, but it's also this energy and this action. And as you do that, and as I tap into that, I see all these little boys and girls coming to the circle of us holding hands, just coming out of the woodwork. And they're different shapes and colors and wearing different clothes. And it's this beautiful, safe, sacred space that you're a part of and that you're leading. And it was funny. I thought my guides were going to just be really quiet today, and I was going to really just really listen, but they're very loud and clear. And that was Ring Around the Rosie. And it's like, we've got this circle. And when Kathryn was talking, she was in the middle doing her little thing with her magic wand. And which is just, I almost want to cry. It was so powerful. And then all of these other souls that are showing up to join us today. So I'm just honored. Thanks, you guys. Oh my gosh. Yay.
Totally. I concur,
Awesome.
Kelly.
Okay. Tim, if you want to just share a little bit about your, journey, where you are today, but certainly how you got to be with us today.
Yeah, definitely. You guys can hear me okay?
Yep. And I love your headphones, by the way.
Speaking of children, these are my kids. They work well though. Yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on this. It's a real honor. I love your platform. I've gotten to know Elizabeth extremely well over these last three years or so as a fellow survivor. I'm incredibly inspired by her and anybody she's connected me to. Kathryn, the same. Kathryn, what you're doing on the level you're doing it at, I can't think of anything I would love to aspire to than what you do. So thank you everyone for, letting me be in this space with you. And just to summarize, I kind of, Kathryn mentioned coming from the young girl perspective. I come from it from the adult perspective in terms of my abuse. In short, I was a Jesuit volunteer in Central America, Southern Belize, for 2 years from 2004 to 2006. And unfortunately, I was placed there to work directly with a sexual predator whose name was Father Ted Desiak. And so in short, 20 years ago is when I was fed alcohol, given drugs, and then sexually assaulted on multiple occasions by him. That all came back in the start of 2019 through just an out of body experience is really the only way I can describe it. When people talk about going crazy or losing their mind, to me that has a whole different perspective now, because I truly felt like that was what was happening to me. Fast forward, 3 years and almost a lifetime later for me, thanks to my wife, who saved my life, literally. And then being able to take kind of the worst experience of life and now begin to transform it into advocacy, into helping build a platform for anybody who has any type of abuse, young or old. And I really think, being able to do it from my perspective, adult cases coming forward more and more and more. I want to be able to work with groups like Kathryn's to change the letter of the law such that there's justice available no matter when the abuse happened, how it happened, and really, to be able to hold the institution, the individuals, but the institution accountable who have allowed this and really perpetuated it in a very, very powerful and incredibly damaging way to get to the other side of this, which to me is, Kathryn, I love that image of a bullhorn. I've done so much inner child work I've done 3 years of incredibly intensive therapy of so many modalities, can't even number them all, to get to this place where I can find my younger self. And I love that image, Kelly, of people, inner child, all of us circling around, because I really do think that's what we have to connect to. We have to connect to that youngest version of ourselves, and to be able to see that innocence and that love and that purity, and then be able to advocate from that place. Because advocating to me from a place of, we can be driven by anger. I know me personally, I've been driven by rage in a lot of ways in the past several years, but to be able to channel that into just incredible passion, compassion, and drive to making change possible. So that's just kind of my story in a nutshell.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being people first. You represent a really big and a heavy and a lot of other words, conversation and advocacy and movement. But you're also people, and your courage is really what, from my perspective, is the root cause that will actually create shift and change, not just between people, but on in the level of law and things of that nature. But it has to start with people, and it has to start with courage. So I just wanted to honor you both for starting there with us in this conversation. And as we move through our first kind of segment here, and we're getting into our next piece, Kathryn, I'm wondering if you could at least just start the conversation from your perspective. Being with the Child US Advocacy Group, what are you seeing as some of those things that do affect the most people kind of across the board when it comes to having abuse at any point in their life? Are there triggers? Are there things that you're seeing that you can kind of point to and say, hey, if this is something that's happening, really pay attention?
Sure. Well, first, I just want to say, Tim, that all sexual abuse is about power and abuse of power. Mm-hmm. And as a mother of 5, and some of them are young adults, I can tell you firsthand that they don't grow up when they turn 18.
Mm-hmm. And hold on a second. You just lost me there. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry to report the truth. But we know bioneurologically that the brain doesn't stop growing until about age 25 or 26. So that's why we're working with many different jurisdictions to have laws apply to adults, if you can call them that, right? Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to say that. And I think the biggest thing to answer the question is that What we know is that sexual abuse silences children. And because this is what happens, I don't think that perpetrators and institutions should be protected by the passage of time while, survivors and victims, however they identify, suffer in perpetuity. This is not good public policy. It is not good law when the very institution and predator silences the victim that they should benefit from the silence, anxiety, shame, and deep trauma that they bury their victims in. So that's one of the things I really push for, because we know that delayed disclosure is a very real scientific event that occurs with survivors. It certainly occurred with me and every survivor I've ever spoken to.
Okay, Kathryn, that was great. Thank you. Hey, Brian, you can pull us out.
No, perfect.
we're like paper, rock, scissors. We're like chasing each other.
There's going to be a moment of silence, but this silence is okay. And we'll be right back with segment 2. Thank you both for being here. This is Being Curious with Kelly and Brian.
Elizabeth Sullivan, a certified yoga therapist and friend of the Being Curious show, is excited to announce her upcoming Soma healing experience, The Physical Alchemist. This program is designed to teach you how to embody your divine nature in a beautiful and sacred space at the Om Center of Healing in St. Paul. It will be held twice a month from April 12th through May, with a break in the summer and resuming in the fall. Elizabeth will guide a committed group of people through a deep dive into grounding high frequencies into your physical body for optimal balance of body, mind, and soul. Throughout the program, you will learn various techniques, including re-educating your pelvic floor and core, supporting your physical, mental, and emotional bodies with breath practices, and working with the foundational Ayurveda practices. Elizabeth brings passion, dedication, and commitment to everything she shares and teaches, with the desire to help people step into their sovereignty and healing states. To reserve your spot to the Physical Alchemist program, visit elizabethsullivan.love or the omcenterofhealing.com.
So, Kelly, what are you curious about?
Well, Brian, as you know, I'm curious about many things, but today I'm curious about the Edge magazine, something very near and dear to my heart. The Edge magazine is a trusted 30-year-old leading holistic health and wellness magazine and website dedicated to the curiosities of the mind, body, and spirit, here, there, and everywhere. TheEdgeMagazine.net uploads new content every day from thought leaders all throughout the world. Our print magazine is dropped off at 300-plus sites in the Midwest, around the country, and beyond, and we do offer subscriptions mailed to your home or business. In every issue, in the middle, and that's very important, it's in the middle, is our partner directory, or my own personal black book of practitioners, connecting teachers and seekers in a wide variety of modalities, ranging from events and experiences, functional medicine, intuitive coaching, shamanic healing, feng shui, psychic mediums, sound healing, intuitive jewelry, and much, much more. Have you discovered EdgeMagazine.net yet? Check out our website at edgemagazine.net for more information. Have you checked out Body Lab USA Holistic Health and Wellness events yet? Well, guess what? Here's your chance. March 25th from 10 to 5 at the Rosemont Community Center. Body Lab USA will be hosting 4 guest speakers, a psychic gallery with medium Claudia Johnson, 25 vendors offering a wide variety of services and products, and gift bags for the first 25 people through the door. That's Saturday, March 25th from 10 to 5 at the Rosemont Community Center. Tell them you heard about it on AM 950. More information at bodylabusa.com.
And welcome back. This is the Being Curious show. Brian and Kelly. We are here with our amazing guest host, Elizabeth. She is a superstar on our show. We love having her. And she has brought us 2 extraordinary people today, and we've gotten to know them a little bit in segment 1. But we were really jumping into, I think, some very important, like a really important part of this conversation that I think, Kathryn, as you were getting into more detail there, we want people to understand what to look for so that they could maybe even be the person that starts a conversation with someone who is still in that silent part of their trauma where they might not even be aware or remember. And so I think this is as important for people who have been through the trauma as it is for everyone else who can be much more attuned and aware, to really engage in more of these conversations happening. And I think that's really what we're looking to do today, is hoping that our conversation opens up more of those other conversations. So Kathryn, please kind of delve into more, that you started there in segment 1.
Sure. I was really talking about the science of delayed disclosure, and why do survivors take a long time to come forward. I hear it from lawmakers all the time. Well, why did you take so long? Well, because I was basically hit over the head and knocked unconscious with the shame and anxiety and depression and fear, and I wasn't able to speak. You're basically gagged by your perpetrator, right? And I think it's really, I look at this 2 ways. One is how do we help parents and other folks out there really identify, that something might be wrong. I think first of all, anytime some person takes a great interest in you, it's a problem. And I think also, seeing any sort of predatory type of behavior, favors, any sort of, what we call grooming type of behavior, creating friendships, you're really special, lots of gifts, and secrecy. There's a lot of secrecy around that. So, and then with children, I think any sort of change, I had major issues with sleep. My parents took me to neurologists trying to figure out why I couldn't sleep and why I was falling asleep in the middle of the day. And so any sort of significant change, I think we should pay attention. On the legal side of this, what I tell lawmakers, because quite frankly, they annoy the crap out of me when they ask this question, why did you take so long? It's not fair. And, typically what I say to them is, we're not talking about your typical torts. We're not talking about a slip and fall. Let's be real. We're talking about the rape, sodomy, and sexual assault of our children. These are not the same types of torts. And bad actors and predators should not be rewarded for the very silence and anxiety and depression that they cause in their victims. And I try to explain that to them as well in terms of the science of traumatology.
So, Kathryn, you bring forward, brilliant points here. And I think the work you're doing to shift laws so they no longer protect perpetrators is stunning. And way overdue in the United States and I would say even across the globe. And you also bring forward, I think that's important to highlight for both you and Tim bring this forward, that yes, there's delay in reporting because of the trauma that as young children we experience, or as a young adult who, even though you're technically 18, those laws should not prevent you from reporting, because abuse is abuse. It doesn't just stop being abuse because you turn 18. And that how it can show up in people. And Tim, you spoke to this briefly in your introduction with us, that literally your wife saved your life. People who are remembering their trauma, their abuse, of any nature, right? Because yes, sexual abuse and sodomy and rape happen, and often there is the grooming up to that point, but it can show up as, suicidal tendencies, addiction, depression, lack of sleep, loss of appetite, hard to nourish yourself. It can show up in autoimmune stuff like it has in my system. There is a number of ways that this can show and present. And as each of us are able to kind of look at our abuse and do the healing that and healing will look different for everyone, that trauma loop that we're stuck in, at least in my experience, shifts into advocacy and the desire for change. And so, you're highlighting some really important things with the work you're doing, Kathryn, and Tim, you also coming forward on your own healing journey to shift that rage you feel into like the courage to speak out instead of letting it stay inside of you.
So Tim, how did you go from like ready to go to wanting to channeling it? I just see like the energy channeling from that anger to that, okay, let's be proactive. Let's get in the circle and let's create this safe space for, I want to say, I don't want to just say children because I want to honor everybody, all the souls that are touched, right? Mm-hmm. So Tim, shine a little light on that, please.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, looking at it from the perspective of, I don't take the dark night of the soul with any connotation to religion. I took it as my own experience. And, I think to come from a place of, being suicidal for several years, having addiction issues, depressions, major depression, people, and that would all kind of make sense for me looking back. It always does, right? But when I came back from Belize 20 years later, until I uncovered all these, people would say, it's like, you're two different people. You live two different lives, like before Belize and after Belize. Mm. Before Belize, I was just very sociable, knew everybody in high school, knew everybody in college. I came back, I became a hermit, became isolated. So I think speaking to those points of how do we identify when people are suffering, you guys, Kathryn, spoke to those, Elizabeth as well. I think to know, I can tell you, I've actually had one of my best friends come forward with his own childhood abuse when he was 5 and 6 years old. And to be on a very similar, although radically different experiences that we had of our abuse, to be on the same path, towards healing, there's such power in that. There's such power in connecting with other people. So for me, a major part of the healing was, again, very intensive therapy that I continue to do. But then it was connecting with groups like SNAP. That's one of the first groups, Survivors Network of those abused by priests. I can't say enough about them. They've been advocating for 40 plus years for victims, not only within the Catholic Church, but many other religions and institutions. And so I think the shift really started to happen when I met Elizabeth. Like Elizabeth, again, outside of my wife, like Elizabeth helped me save my life, like just to know that I wasn't alone, that I had the strength, not just to start healing and living again, but then that strength that I started to garner in hearing other people's stories. And I think finally being at the place where I am now, which is, and my wife can attest, to the best place I've ever been in my life, doesn't come without dark days, doesn't come without still flashbacks at times, still being in a corner in the fetal position, screaming. I think when knowing it heals over time, it's a progressive thing, but there's going to still be those moments. I want to let people know, whether it was as a child or as an adult, in those moments, the darkest of moments, you have other people out there who can love you and hold you through that period when it feels like you really don't want to go on. And I was there. I had a plan. I had everything laid out. So to see my own children now, try not to get choked up.
No, get choked up. It's all good.
To be able to look at them, they're 8 and 10 years old, to know that I would give my life for them, that I would never allow any kind of abuse ever, in any way, shape, or form. Where I feel that on a deep, heartfelt level, I know that groups like what Kathryn does, what SNAP does, what you guys are doing, that's part of the healing work. That's part of, if we can do nothing else, if the laws don't change, and they're changing, and we know this, right? But I think the
Thank
healing
goodness.
work, yeah, absolutely. The healing work part of it is where we can, I think, at least for me, is where I can feel whole again, and where I can go within my heart and say, this ends right here, right now. Like there's no more. So yeah, it's been a very dramatic shift for me. I've done it with a lot of people, a lot of help, a lot of resources, but I think this is one of the most important things is getting on any platform. Right. And Elizabeth knows this. I'll tell anybody my story. I'll tell everybody my story. There's not one single thing. I mean, it got to the Boston Globe, and to be able to go into the Boston Globe and read the comments, even though my wife said don't do it, I went in the comment section of the Boston Globe and read people's opinions, one after another. It was about 175 of them. I read every single one of them. Some very, very supportive, very loving. Others, I can't even begin to tell you the knife through my heart and soul when people would say things such as, how could this guy put himself in that position? So for those kinds of people, I could care less. For the people who are supportive, who can hear and understand, that's who we unite with.
And you never know what it's triggering in people who have those responses. I always get curious about that.
How could you put yourself in that situation?
But I do. I get
my mind is blown. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that's a very good point, Elizabeth. I think there is a reactivity, there's a defensiveness by which if you can cut through those layers, if you can get down to it, there's a protective part of people like that who protects the church, at least from my seeing them protect the church to the very bitter end. I wonder as well.
It challenges, I mean, whether it's a church or an institution or a sports team or, whatever organization is misusing power to manipulate and control other people for, to abuse, it comes down to how do we each not allow that denial, that cognitive dissonance, that darkness to exist. And the more that each of us speak about it and not let it be there, like I have found one of the most powerful tools I can do to protect my children is to ask questions. As soon as I feel the red flag, like, hey, taking the whole class to camp, or hey, the whole soccer team is going to Sweden and your kids are going to stay across the city from you in a major, large classroom on foam mats with one chaperone. I mean, all my shackles go up, right? And then I start asking questions, asking about policy, asking about protocols, asking how does that even work? Yeah? So, Kathryn, you mentioned as part of your work, the need to protect children in the epidemic of harm. Can you speak a little bit more to that, since I'm starting to bring that forward a little bit, I guess, from a parental perspective? And I know from my own experience, I have to watch that I'm not a helicopter parent while being awake and aware and providing, It's a tricky balance, at least for me.
Okay, Kathryn, I want you to give us just a little glimpse, and then we're going to come back and start off that immediately in segment 3.
Sure. So people would rather victim blame than deal with a really hard, dark truth. Including parents.
Including what?
Parents.
Yes. It's hard.
Okay, you guys, we'll be back. Have you checked out Body Lab USA Holistic Health and Wellness events yet? Well, guess what? Here's your chance. March 25th from 10 to 5 at the Rosemont Community Center. Body Lab USA will be hosting 4 guest speakers, a psychic gallery with medium Claudia Johnson, 25 vendors offering a wide variety of services and products, and gift bags for the first 25 people through the door. That's Saturday, March 25th from 10 to 5 at the Rosemont Community Center. Tell them you heard about it on AM 950. More information at bodylabusa.com. Elizabeth Sullivan, a certified yoga therapist and friend of the Being Curious show, is excited to announce her upcoming Soma healing experience, The Physical Alchemist. This program is designed to teach you how to embody your divine nature in a beautiful and sacred space at the Om Center of Healing in St. Paul. It will be held twice a month from April 12th through May, with a break in the summer and resuming in the fall. Elizabeth will guide a committed group of people through a deep dive into grounding high frequencies into your physical body for optimal balance of body, mind, and soul. Throughout the program, you will learn various techniques, including re-educating your pelvic floor and core, supporting your physical, mental, and emotional bodies with breath practices, and working with the foundational Ayurveda practices. Elizabeth brings passion, dedication, and commitment to everything she shares and teaches, with the desire to help people step into their sovereignty and healing states. To reserve your spot to the Physical Alchemist program, visit elizabethsullivan.love or the omcenterofhealing.com.
Hello, everyone. Brian Mariani here, co-host of the Being Curious show. And I wanted to take some time today to really highlight my absolutely extraordinary co-host, Kelly Wagner. She is the owner of the edgemagazine.net. She has a magazine that's both online and you can get it on the shelf. It's being spread around the country. And that makes me really, really happy because the work that she's done to create a really open and service-first space of extraordinary practitioners, really masters of their art and modality. And she's brought them all into a really healthy, curious space where she shines a light onto them, but she shines an even bigger light for everyone to see who these people are, what they do, and connect directly with them. And so I just wanted to give her a big, big shout out. Welcome back, everyone. Segment 3. We're very grateful to be having this conversation. And Kathryn, you were just speaking to something, and you said something, and I want you to repeat it, and then please keep going from there.
Yeah, I think what I said is that folks would rather victim blame, and I see that a lot, than deal with a really hard, dark, heavy truth. And the truth is that about 13.5% of our children will be sexually assaulted before they're 18. The other truth is that most abuse of all folks happens under age 27 and always in a power dynamic. And I think it's just, people can be spiritually wimpy and they just don't want to face a really hard truth. And I think that's why, I certainly have gotten a lot of kickback from all different angles. And it really just sort of fuels my fire. It doesn't dissuade me at all. It makes me yell a little bit louder and a little bit longer. But I think, if we look at the statistics, it's, this is the real epidemic. Mm-hmm. COVID was terrible. Let's face it. I mean, terrible. Over 1 million people in this country died. But this is the silent, ongoing epidemic that happens in every part of society, whether it's families or religious institutions, youth-serving organizations, coaches, teachers, doctors. It is ubiquitous in nature. And it is quite a burden on our society. And I think it's just really hard. But I think now lawmakers are starting to pay attention, And I think that's why we've had, 27 states pass revival legislation and 18 at this point, or I'm going to work on increasing that number. 18 states, I should say actually jurisdictions, 15 states, 2 territories, and the federal government have eliminated statute of limitations. And I think people are starting to figure it out, but we still have a lot of people with blinders on, and we just have to keep at it.
So, Kathryn, I'm really curious about what is the pushback from a law perspective? Like when this conversation hits up against the law, what is the pushback you're getting? Like what are those reasons? I think if people understand like the walls and the moats and the things that are in the way, that can be really helpful. And I don't think it's something that, you're probably part of such a small group of people that actually know what those things are.
Mhm.
And I would think it'd be very valuable for a lot more people to know.
Sure. So I have to say first that all of the arguments that I get thrown at me when I'm testifying are a combination of ignorance and bullshit, to be quite clear. Typically we get, oh, it's not fair. How about due process? We don't do this for other torts. And of course we don't, because other torts are not like these torts. These are totally different types of horrific civil wrongs. So I get that a lot. I also get, well, we have the criminal system and let that take care of it. Well, we know that generally speaking, there's been several studies on this, that only about 20% of all criminal sexual assaults go forward to prosecution, and less than half of those result in a conviction. So it just doesn't work. And we have a higher burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We have ADAs and district attorneys that have a limited bandwidth, not a lot of funding. They just can't go forward. It becomes very, very challenging. The system in the criminal end has a lot of limitations. We also get, it's not fair, memories fade, and all that BS. And well, first thing I tell them is no survivor forgets what happens to them, and that plaintiffs still have to prove their cases. They still have to pass a 12B6 motion to move forward, or a 12B motion to dismiss. We still have the rules of evidence and the rules of civil procedure, and attorneys are not going to take weak cases. And fraudulent types of cases are exceedingly rare. You just don't see them. So we typically get those. And we also get, the final one is, oh, our courts are going to be flooded. Oh my God, this is terrible. The sky is falling, blah, 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 right? And I just tell them, no, we have all the data on 11 states. A state like New York with 20 million people, 8 million in the city alone, had a 0.05% filing of all their population. So it's just, these are scare tactics, right? Because They don't want to be accountable, and institutions are paying off these lobbyists, or paying these lobbyists, I should say. Maybe I shouldn't say paying off, but sometimes it feels like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
These are the arguments that they make. And, every time they throw me a hardball, I just try to knock it out of the park, because it's just ridiculous.
And thank goodness you do knock them out of the park, because, recently we just had you were, I think, instrumental in this, but the Adult Survivor Act in New York that I know Tim and I followed closely and did what we could on. And, maybe Tim, you want to speak, Tim and or Kathryn, you want to speak a little bit to that. But also, Tim, maybe you want to, Kathryn's laying out kind of what the roadblocks are and how that's shifting, the landscape shifting. I think also our collective consciousness, thank goodness, is shifting on this, so that people are starting to be like, yeah, that is the epidemic, right? This is the epidemic of harm. And we need to do better. But Tim, in your journey here, what have you seen as obstacles, and how are those also hopefully getting knocked out of the park?
Yeah, I think, Kathryn, it's funny you said, they think the sky will fall. My opinion is let it fall. Let it fall. Let it fall and smash everything in the system, and let's rewrite it. So, what have I found? I think one of the biggest questions, and I continue to reflect on this as a middle-class, college-educated white male in this country, I've got my story out there, and I've got a platform that's growing now to be able to tell my story. The privilege with that is very great for me. And, so I think my question is, a person from sitting in my shoes, how can we go out, and those statistics you gave, Kathryn, are mind-boggling. They're mind-boggling, especially for people who are ignorant, right? who don't want to believe it. I think that's, I think the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge or roadblock is getting people to their platform. Whomever it might be, whatever, background, socioeconomic standing, that type of thing, getting the resources to them. Because otherwise if you can't start the healing process, at least in my opinion, you can't start the healing process, you really can kind of get stuck in this loop, this loop of trauma that can just send you, and we know the statistics are out there, right? The risk of victims of abuse, victims of sexual abuse, the cost of the epidemic. If we want to talk about the epidemic, look at the cost of the epidemic. Look what sexual abuse and trauma inflicts on people, and then the cost of that on many different levels. I think if you can put things in terms of, I've got a financial background, I'm a stats guy. Like, let's put this as hard and as concrete as we can in black and white, where you're not debating this. These are the facts of the facts, and we're going to present those facts, and you can try to skew it all you want, but I think once we can kind of get to that place where people feel safe enough, healed enough, to come forward, I want to be able to help people find their platform. That's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Like, I want to do this on a nationwide, a global level, but I also want to do this on a very microscopic level, by which getting people in my own community, and I work with several different advocacy groups now for sexual assault. How do we get them the resources to let people come to them to heal, and then to join this incredible movement? Because there are a lot of roadblocks out there. Again, I have the privilege of being a small business owner who's independent. I have some financial resources now that through that business by which I can help support these different things. But it's going to take a lot more than that.
Yeah. As we're wrapping up segment 3, you guys, this just has gone by so quickly. Please, both guests, Tim and Kathryn, what resources are out there? So if someone is silently suffering, whether it's watching from the sidelines or have been a victim themselves, what are some resources that not only that you know about or that you're a part of that you could share to our audience? You already mentioned SNAP, Tim. Please, just the airwaves are yours. Please, just let us know.
Yeah, I would share that certainly Child USA has wonderful data available. So Child USA is our sister organization. They're a 501c3. We're a 501c4. Which allows me to take my gloves off and really smack some people around from time to time as needed. So I would say Child USA, Child US Advocacy, our group, we have an updated map on what you can do, how you can get involved.
Great.
And, we talked about how part of the healing is using your voice, and advocating can be really healing to folks. I would also say that RAIN is a great resource. Darkness to Light is another great resource. And SNAP, I've been working very closely with SNAP and Zach Heiner for quite some time. So I think those are all good places to start. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Amazing. And if you were to say one thing that could reach into the heart of someone who maybe thinks someone is struggling, or someone who has had something happen in their life, what would be that? What would be something that would get their attention that you could say today?
Well, I would say 2 things. One, we believe you.
Awesome. I think that's a really, really important message. And I hope it's heard. And I just want to acknowledge something that Tim shared earlier, which was that even with all of the growth that he's had, he still has days where he's in pain. And I think everyone's trying to sell this fantasy world of this perfect life. And what we should really be talking about is that no matter how great your life is, there's always pain. There's always uncertainty. There's always, there's constant work every day. And I think if that's the foundation for all of us, it might be a little bit easier to have some of those harder conversations because you're not afraid that you aren't perfect. And
Totally.
no one is. And we're all in this adventure together. And I think if there's anything that you heard today, it's to really know that you're not alone, as you said, Kathryn. And I really want to honor you for being out there and fighting in the big leagues. And I want to honor Tim for the courage that he has and that you shared today. So thank you for both being here. And Kelly, take us out.
Well, Tim he must have had to teleport to something else. It's all good. So I want to thank Elizabeth for co-hosting, Kathryn Robb, and her website is childusaadvocacy.org, Tim Ballard, Mr. Brian, Patrick, you guys being curious. Thank you so much. See you soon.